Elderly woman finds giant arrow in the desert, and what she discovers shocks the town. Martha Miller was walking through the dry land she had known since she was a girl when something completely out of the ordinary caught her attention. At 72 years old, she had never seen anything like it on those arid lands on the outskirts of Abilene, in the interior of Texas. Hundreds of stones had been carefully laid out on the ground, forming a gigantic arrow pointing directly north. The discovery left her completely bewildered. Martha had known every inch of that region for decades, walking there every morning since she retired from the school where she taught for 40 years. How had that formation appeared out of nowhere overnight? She approached slowly, leaning on her worn wooden cane. The stones weren't from the region. They were all rounded, as if they had come from a distant river. Someone had gone to immense trouble to transport them there and arrange them with millimeter precision. The arrow was at least 50 feet long and 15 feet wide. Martha looked around, searching for any sign of who could have done it. The ground was dry and cracked from the lack of rain in recent months, typical of the region during the dry season. There were no visible footprints, no vehicle tracks, nothing to indicate how the stones had gotten there. Intrigued and with her curiosity piqued, she decided to go into town to tell someone about her discovery. Her first stop was at Mr. Arthur's pharmacy, where she usually bought her blood pressure medicine and always chatted about neighborhood news. "Good morning, Mr. Arthur," greeted Martha, entering the pharmacy as the bell on the door announced her arrival. "Mrs. Martha, how are you?" replied the pharmacist, a middle-aged man with thick glasses and graying hair. "Listen, something very strange happened this morning. On my walk, I found hundreds of stones arranged in the shape of an arrow right there on the old road that goes to the Foster Ranch." The pharmacist's face changed completely. The friendly expression disappeared, replaced by something Martha couldn't quite identify. Perhaps nervousness, perhaps fear. "Oh, it must have been some children's prank," he said quickly, avoiding her gaze and starting to organize medicines on the shelf. "You know how it is. The kids play all sorts of tricks around here." Martha found his reaction odd. Mr. Arthur had always been a communicative person who loved to talk about any subject. He had never treated her with such coldness. "But it didn't seem like a prank to me, Mr. Arthur. There were so many stones, very well organized. Someone worked all night to do that." "Mrs. Martha, don't you have anything better to do?" he replied impatiently, "making up mysteries where there aren't any. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a lot of work." The retired teacher left the pharmacy even more intrigued. In 50 years of living in that town, she had never seen Arthur treat anyone that way, especially her, who was respected by everyone as one of the most upstanding people in the community. She decided to look for her neighbor and best friend, Gladys, a 68-year-old woman who lived in the house next to hers. Gladys had been a widow for 10 years and had a reputation for always being well informed about everything that happened in town. "Gladys, can you believe I found something very strange today?" Martha told her, sitting on her friend's porch. "Tell me, dear. You know I love a bit of news." Martha described in detail what she had found. Gladys listened attentively, asking questions about the size, location, and shape of the stones. "And the worst part is that the pharmacist acted very strange when I told him. He even seemed scared. That is very strange indeed, Martha. Let's go see it with our own eyes. 2 heads are better than 1. The 2 friends walked together to the spot where Martha had made the discovery. Along the way, they talked about the possibilities of who could have done that and why. "Maybe it's some kind of signal for airplanes," suggested Gladys, "or maybe it's a marker for some construction that's going to be done around here." But why didn't anyone say anything, and why did Mr. Arthur get so nervous? When they arrived at the spot, both were paralyzed. The stones were no longer there. The ground was completely clean, as if nothing had happened. Martha felt a chill run down her spine. "But I swear on my mother's soul that it was all here, Gladys. Hundreds of stones neatly arranged, forming a perfect arrow." Gladys looked at her friend with concern. "Martha, are you sure it wasn't a dream? Or maybe some problem with your eyesight?" "Gladys, I see perfectly well with my glasses, and I wasn't dreaming. I came here early this morning and it was all here." They walked around the area, searching for any trace of the stones. It was then that Martha noticed something Gladys hadn't: marks on the dry ground. They weren't normal footprints, but tracks left by heavy boots, as if someone had dragged objects across the ground during the night. "Look here, Gladys. These marks weren't here this morning." Her friend bent down to examine them better. "Indeed, they look recent. Someone has been here after you passed by." That discovery completely changed Gladys's perspective. If there were marks on the ground, it meant Martha had really seen something, and someone had purposely removed the stones. Why would someone do that, Martha? Why place the stones at night and take them away during the day? "I don't know, but I'm determined to find out. Someone doesn't want me to know what those stones meant." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like, and especially to subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. In the following weeks, Martha began to wake up earlier and walk around the area at different times, hoping to find clues about who was doing that. Her quiet, retired routine had turned into a real investigation. During her morning walks, she started talking to other people who passed by on the road: farm workers, street vendors, truck drivers. Most hadn't noticed anything different, but a merchant who sold fruit by the side of the road gave her an interesting piece of information. "Mrs. Martha, since you're asking, I did see something strange about 3 weeks ago. It was very early, still dark, and I saw a man messing with stones right where you said." Martha's heart raced. "Could you see his face?" "Not very well, it was dark. But I can say he was a young man, maybe 40, 50 years old. Tall, thin, wearing dark clothes. When my bicycle made a noise and he realized I was coming, he ran off and disappeared among those big rocks over there." "And why didn't you tell anyone?" "Oh, Mrs. Martha, we learn around here not to meddle in other people's lives. I thought it was just some crazy person making art, but now that you're asking, I thought it best to tell." Martha thanked him for the information and continued her investigation. The description of the man had stirred a painful memory she had tried to keep buried for many years: her son David, who had left Abilene 30 years ago after a terrible fight with her and had never returned. David was a newly graduated lawyer at the time, 28 years old, and had started working at a local prosecutor's office. He was an idealistic young man, always questioning injustices and defending the underdog. The fight between them happened when he started investigating some irregularities at City Hall, and she, worried about his safety, asked him to stop getting into trouble. "Mother, you don't understand," David had said in that last argument. "People have been stealing from this city for decades. Whole families losing their land because of crooked deals, and you want me to stay quiet? I want you to stay alive, boy. These people don't play games. Let this go and mind your own life." "If everyone thinks like that, nothing will ever change, Mother. I can't live knowing I'm being complicit with this situation." She had responded harshly, saying that if he didn't stop those foolish ideas, he could find another place to live. The next day, David packed his bags and left, leaving only a note saying that one day she would understand he was right. All these years, Martha had regretted those harsh words. She tried to locate him several times, but he had completely disappeared. None of his college friends knew where he was, and he never made contact again. Now the merchant's description made a wild hope arise in her heart. Was it possible that David had returned? But why would he make those stone formations? And why didn't he look for her directly? Determined to discover the truth, Martha intensified her search. She started leaving home in the early hours, at 4 in the morning, to try to catch whoever was responsible for the stones. Gladys tried to dissuade her, worried about her friend's safety. "Martha, you're putting yourself in danger. If someone is doing these things in secret and took the trouble to remove everything afterward, it's because they don't want to be discovered. It could be dangerous." "Gladys, I need to know what's happening. You don't understand. This might be related to my David." "Your David?" "Martha, it's been 30 years since he left here. Why would he come back now doing these strange things? I can't explain it, but I have a very strong feeling it's related to him, and if it is, I need to find him." One morning, during one of her early walks, Martha spotted a faint light in the distance, exactly at the place where she had found the first arrow of stones. Her heart raced. She would finally discover who was behind it. She approached slowly, trying not to make noise, but the dry ground full of twigs made it impossible to walk silently. When she was about 50 meters from the spot, the light went out and she heard running footsteps. "Wait!" shouted Martha, forgetting all caution. "Please, don't run. I just want to talk." But the person had disappeared into the darkness. Martha reached the spot and found a still warm flashlight and several stones scattered on the ground, as if someone had been interrupted in the middle of their work. Besides the stones, there was something that made her tremble, a slightly yellowed piece of paper, as if it were very old. She picked it up carefully and put it in her pocket to examine better at home, under the light. Back at her house, Martha turned on all the kitchen lights and examined the paper in detail. It was a piece of a letter, handwritten in a script she recognized immediately. It was her son, David's handwriting. The piece said, "I can no longer stay silent, knowing what I know. The families in the region deserve to know the truth about what happened to their land. I know it might be dangerous, but it's the right thing to do. If something happens to me, I've left this information stored in a safe place so that one day—" The paper was torn at the end, but it was enough to confirm her suspicions. David had returned and was trying to communicate with her through those stone formations. Martha spent the rest of the night awake, trying to understand why her son wasn't seeking her out directly. Why all that mysterious staging? She concluded that he must be afraid of something or someone. The next morning she went to the fruit vendor again to see if he had more information about the man he had seen arranging the stones. "Mr. Henry, remember you told me about the man you saw messing with the stones? Can you remember any other detail?" "Let me think. Oh yes, now I remember something. He was wearing a cap, but when he bent down to pick up a stone, the cap fell off, and I saw he had graying hair. And also, he had a small scar on his forehead, right here," said Henry, pointing to the left side of his own forehead. Martha felt her legs go weak. The scar on the forehead was something only she and David knew about. He had fallen off his bike at 12 and cut his forehead. It was the definitive confirmation that her son had returned. "Mr. Henry, this man, did he seem afraid of something?" "Now that you ask, yes. He kept looking around all the time as if he was expecting someone to show up. And when he saw me coming, the look of fright on his face, it was like he'd seen a ghost." Martha returned home heartbroken. Her son was there, so close, but he was afraid of something and couldn't approach her directly. She decided she needed to find a way to communicate with him. That afternoon she returned to the spot where she had found the paper and left a note under a large stone. "David, if it's you, I know you're there. Please, seek me out. Your mother who loves you and never stopped missing you, Martha." For 3 days, she returned to the spot to see if the note was still there. On the 4th day, the paper had disappeared, but in its place was another. "Mom, I can't show myself yet. I'm in danger. The stones are a sign. Follow the direction they point. You will find answers. Be careful who you trust. I love you." Martha cried as she read those lines. After 30 years, she finally had news from her son, but the message also worried her deeply. What danger was this? And why couldn't he appear? Determined to follow the note's instructions, Martha began walking north, following the heading the stone arrows always pointed. Gladys insisted on accompanying her, worried about her friend's safety. "If it really is your son, Martha, why doesn't he come talk to you directly? This is all very strange." "Gladys, he said he's in danger. He must have his reasons for acting this way." The two women walked for over an hour northward, passing through increasingly arid and isolated land. It was an area on the outskirts of Abilene, where few people ventured. Finally, they reached an area where there were several large stones scattered naturally across the terrain. Among these stones, Martha found something that made her stop. A small notebook covered in plastic, hidden in a crevice between 2 rocks. "Gladys, look at this," she exclaimed, carefully picking up the notebook. The notebook contained page after page of notes in tiny handwriting, dates, people's names, sums of money, and descriptions of properties. Martha recognized several names of families from the region, including some who had lost their land years ago under strange circumstances. One specific page caught her attention. It read, "Miller family, 15 hectares, forced expropriation in 1995, amount paid, $5,000, real land value at the time, $80,000. Intermediary, Prosecutor Sterling. Final beneficiary, Lone Star Development Corp. Gladys, look at this. My family lost that land in 1995. I remember perfectly. They said it was for a public works project, but they paid a pittance. And look here, Martha. There are the names of the Foster family, the Thompsons, the Pereiras, all families who lost their land back then. The two women continued reading the notebook, discovering an extensive list of irregularities. There were detailed descriptions of how the scheme worked. Families were pressured to sell their properties for values far below market price, always under the claim that it was for public works or in the public interest. Then the lands were resold to businessmen for much higher prices. My God, Martha, this is a scandal. Dozens of families were robbed. And look here, Gladys, there are recent notes too. This scheme didn't stop in the past. It's still happening today. On one of the last pages, there was a note that made Martha feel a knot in her stomach. Investigation started in 1994 by lawyer A. Miller, lawyer forced to leave town in 1995 after threats. Documents hidden in a safe place. Investigation resumed in 2024. Gladys, it's him. It's my son David. He was investigating this 30 years ago and was forced to leave town. Now he's back to finish what he started. But Martha, if he was forced to leave because of threats, that means these people are dangerous. What if they find out you're involved? Martha put the notebook inside her bag. Gladys, I can't pretend I didn't see anything. My own family was a victim of this scheme. And if my son is in danger to expose the truth, I will help him. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. In the following days, Martha studied each page of the notebook in detail. The names that appeared most frequently were those of Prosecutor Sterling, who was still active despite his advanced age, of the current Mayor Gregory Harrison, and of some companies that always won the public bids in the city. She decided to look for other families that had been mentioned in the notebook to find out if they knew anything about the scheme. Her first stop was at the house of Mrs. Evelyn Foster, a 75-year-old lady who had lost her ranch in 1998. Mrs. Evelyn, do you remember how you lost your ranch about 26 years ago? Oh, Mrs. Martha, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was one of the worst things that ever happened in my life. They said they needed the land to build a new road, that it was in the public interest. They paid a pittance and then never built any road. And who mediated that negotiation? It was that prosecutor, Sterling. He said if we didn't sell voluntarily, there would be a judicial expropriation, and then we'd receive even less. My husband, God rest his soul, got so upset about the situation that he had a heart attack that same week. Do you know what happened to the land afterwards? Yes, I do. 2 years later, they built a shopping center there. And do you know who owns it? The family of the current mayor. We always knew we were cheated, but what can a simple family do against these powerful people? Martha left Mrs. Evelyn's house with a heavy heart. The story confirmed everything that was in her son's notebook. She decided to look for more families, and they all told similar stories. Always the same pattern: pressure to sell, low prices, claims of public interest, and then commercial use of the lands by people connected to the local power. During her investigations, Martha began to notice she was being watched. Several times when leaving home, she noticed a dark car parked on the corner. When walking through town, she had the feeling someone was following her. One afternoon, upon entering the bakery, the owner treated her strangely, avoiding conversation. "Mr. Henry, how are you?" she greeted him. "Ah, Mrs. Martha, everything's fine," he replied dryly, without looking up from the scale where he was weighing bread. "You seem a bit quiet today. Did something happen?" No. It's just that I have a lot of work. Will you have the usual bread?" Martha noticed something had changed in the townspeople's attitude toward her. Some shopkeepers who had always been courteous now barely responded to her greetings. It was as if they had received some kind of warning not to talk to her. Her suspicions were confirmed when she found her neighbor Gladys looking very worried, waiting for her at home. "Martha, we need to talk. Something very serious happened." "What is it, Gladys?" "This morning, a man from City Hall came here asking about you. He wanted to know if you were in your right mind, if you hadn't been acting strangely lately." Martha felt a chill. "And what did you tell him?" I said you were perfectly normal, that you've always been a lucid and intelligent person. But he insisted, said some people were worried, that you've been asking strange questions and coming up with crazy theories. Gladys, they're trying to discredit me. They probably realized I'm investigating the land scheme. Martha, I'm very scared. If these people made your son leave town 30 years ago, imagine what they could do to you now. Despite her fear, Martha decided she couldn't stop. She was too close to discovering the truth and knew her son was counting on her. That night she returned to the place where she had found the notebook and left another note. David, I found your notebook. I've already spoken with several families. They know I'm investigating and are trying to intimidate me. What should I do? The next day she found the answer. Mom, stop for now. They are watching you. I will try to approach this another way. Be patient and careful. Don't trust anyone from City Hall or the local justice system. D. The message left Martha even more worried. If her own son was asking her to stop, the situation must be very serious. But how could she stand by knowing all of this? Her worries intensified when, a few days later, she received an unexpected visit. It was Prosecutor Sterling himself, accompanied by a doctor she didn't know. Mrs. Martha, good afternoon. I am Prosecutor Sterling. This is a courtesy visit, as some people in town are concerned about you. Concerned? Why? Well, it seems you've been asking strange questions, making up stories about a conspiracy, talking about schemes that don't exist. People are thinking you might need medical help. The doctor stepped forward. Mrs. Martha, I am Dr. Miller, a geriatrics specialist. I came here because I was told you might be suffering from some memory problems or even the onset of senile dementia. Martha felt immense anger. Memory problems? I am perfectly fine in the head, thank you. Are you sure? Continued the prosecutor. Because I was told you've been seeing things that don't exist, like mysterious rock formations that appear and disappear. Those are clear symptoms of mental confusion. I did see the rocks, and I'm sure of what I saw. Mrs. Martha, the doctor interjected, these hallucinations are more common than you think in people your age, but there is treatment. I can prescribe some medication that will help you feel better. I don't want any medication because I'm not sick. The prosecutor sighed, feigning concern. Mrs. Martha, you are living alone, with no family nearby to care for you. Perhaps it would be better to consider treatment in a hospital environment where specialized professionals can help you. Are you trying to have me committed? Martha felt panic. It's merely a suggestion, said the doctor, for your own good and that of the community. A person in mental confusion could hurt themselves or others unintentionally. Get out of my house immediately. I'm fine and don't need any treatment. After they left, Martha called Gladys in a panic. She was trembling with nerves and fear. Gladys, come here quickly, please. Something terrible has happened. Her friend arrived within minutes and found Martha in a state of panic. After hearing the account of the visit, Gladys also became very worried. Martha, they're trying to commit you to silence you. That's what they used to do with people who knew too much. But what can I do? If they bring a court order, they'll take me by force. We need to find a way to expose this scheme before they do that to you. That night, Martha could barely sleep. She knew she needed to act quickly but didn't know how. She was alone with no one's support, against powerful people who had all the resources at their disposal. The next morning, she found another note from her son in the usual spot. Mom, I heard about the prosecutor's visit. We need to speed things up. Tonight at midnight, go to the big rock behind the old church. I'll try to meet you. Come alone and be careful. Martha spent the entire day anxious, waiting for the time of the meeting. At 11:45 p.m., she left the house discreetly and walked to the abandoned church on the outskirts of town. It was an isolated place where hardly anyone would see her. She arrived at the indicated spot a few minutes before midnight. Her heart was beating so loudly she could hear it. Gradually, her eyes adjusted to the darkness, and she could make out the shapes of the rocks around her. Exactly at midnight, she heard footsteps approaching. A tall, thin figure emerged from the darkness, walking slowly toward her. When he was about 10 feet away, the person stopped. "Mom," said a voice she hadn't heard in 30 years. Martha began to cry. "David, is it really you, my son?" "It's me, Mom. I'm sorry for all this secrecy, but there was no other safe way for us to communicate." He moved closer, and she could see the face she had so often dreamed of seeing again. David was thinner, with completely grey hair and expression lines, but his eyes were the same as when he was a boy. "My God, how different you look," she said, touching her son's face. 30 years will do that, Mom. You're older too, but still beautiful." They hugged for a long time, crying together over the separation that had lasted so long. "Why did you never look for me, David? Why did you stay away all this time?" "Mom, when I left here, I was being constantly threatened. I discovered the land scheme and was going to report everything, but they intimidated me so much I had no choice but to leave. And then, as the years passed, I was ashamed to come back after so long. But son, I never stopped loving you. No matter what happened between us, you were always my boy." "I know, Mum, and I regret every day that I left like that. When I came back now and saw how well you were doing, taking care of the house where I grew up, walking the same streets, I realized how much I missed all this." "Why did you come back now, David?" "Because I couldn't forget what I discovered 30 years ago. All these years I've lived in other cities, studied in other fields, but I always thought about the families that were robbed here. And recently I discovered the scheme is still operating with the same people. And now they know you're back. Not yet, at least they're not sure, but they know someone is investigating. That's why they're trying to discredit you, saying you have mental problems." Martha told her son about the prosecutor and doctor's visit. David became very worried. "Mum, this is more serious than I imagined. They might try to commit you by force to silence you. What can we do, son?" "I need to finish gathering the evidence and hand everything over to someone trustworthy outside the city. A journalist, a prosecutor from another jurisdiction, someone who isn't involved in the scheme." "And how long will that take?" "A few weeks, maybe a month. But I'm worried about your safety. Perhaps it's best if you leave town for a while, go visit some relatives." "David, I'm not leaving here and letting you face this alone again. I made that mistake once 30 years ago. Now we go all the way together. Mother, it's dangerous. I don't care. I'm going to help you expose these crooks, whatever it takes." David realized his mother was determined and that it would be useless to try to dissuade her. "All right, Mother. But we'll have to be very careful. From now on, they're going to intensify their surveillance on you." "How will we communicate?" "Keep using the notes in the usual place, and if there's an emergency, put a white cloth in the front window. I'll be watching the house." "Where are you living, David?" "In different places every night. I'm afraid to stay in the same place for too long." They talked for another hour, planning the next steps of the investigation. David explained that he had obtained bank documents proving the money transfers between the accounts of those involved, and also recordings of telephone conversations where they discussed the schemes. "How did you get those recordings, son?" "I worked for a few years as a telecommunications technician in New York City. I learned a few things that are coming in handy now." When they finally said goodbye, Martha returned home with a heart lighter than it had been in decades. Having her son back, even under these difficult circumstances, had filled a void she had carried for 30 years. In the following days, the pressure on Martha increased considerably. She received several visits from social workers, who asked questions about her mental health and her ability to live alone. Neighbors were questioned about her behavior, and some began to treat her with suspicion. One morning, Gladys arrived at her house, very agitated. "Martha, they're spreading around town that you're sick in the head. Yesterday at the market, several people came to ask me if it was true that you were seeing things that don't exist." "What did you say?" "I defended you, of course. I said you're fine, that you've always been a lucid and intelligent person. But some people seemed already convinced that you're ill. Gladys, I need to tell you something, but you have to promise you won't tell anyone." Martha decided to trust her friend and told her about the meeting with David. Gladys was shocked by the revelation. "My God, Martha, your son is alive and back in town?" "Yes, he is, and he has proof that the land scheme is still operating to this day. But why doesn't he go straight to the authorities?" "Because the local authorities are involved in the scheme. Prosecutor Sterling is one of the main participants." Gladys was silent for a few minutes, processing all this information. Martha, that explains why they're trying to discredit you. If they found out you're involved in the investigation, they'll do anything to silence you. That's why I need your help, Gladys. If anything happens to me, you need to tell everything to someone outside the city. Nothing will happen to you, Martha. I won't let it. A few days later, the situation became even more complicated. Martha received a court summons to appear for a compulsory psychiatric evaluation. The document stated it had been requested by concerned family members about her mental state. "But I don't have family here in town," she said to Gladys. "Who could have requested this? It must have been someone posing as a relative. Can they do that?" "Apparently they can. And if I don't show up, they'll come and take me by force." Martha put the white cloth in the window, signaling an emergency to her son. That same night, she found a note from him. "Mom, I heard about the summons. Don't go to the examination. I'm going to speed up the process to expose everything before they harm you. If they try to take you by force, scream and make a scene. Get the attention of neighbors and passers-by." On the day scheduled for the examination, Martha did not show up. 2 hours after the scheduled time, 2 City Hall vehicles stopped in front of her house. 4 men got out, including the doctor who had made the previous visit. "Mrs. Martha, come with us, please. You missed your examination appointment." "I'm not going to any examination. I'm not sick." "You don't have a choice. There's a court order." When they tried to force her into the car, Martha began to scream and struggle. "Help! They're taking me by force. Someone help me." The screams caught the attention of several neighbors, who approached to see what was happening. Gladys came running out of her house. "What are you doing to her?" "It's just a medical examination, ma'am, for her own good. She doesn't want to go, and she has the right to refuse." "Unfortunately not. There's a court order." The commotion attracted more people, and soon there was a small crowd in the street. Some neighbors began to question the legality of that action. "Where's the court order? We want to see the paper," shouted an elderly man. "And why didn't you call her family first?" asked a woman. The public pressure made the men hesitate. They hadn't expected to encounter resistance from the community. After a few minutes of discussion, they decided to back down. "Very well, Mrs. Martha. We'll reschedule the examination for another day. But you will have to show up, whether you want to or not." After they left, several neighbors approached Martha to find out what was going on. She took the opportunity to tell her version of the story. "Everyone, they're trying to have me committed because I discovered a land theft scheme that's been operating for decades in this city. Dozens of families have been deceived and had their properties stolen." "What scheme is this, Mrs. Martha?" asked a neighbor. Martha told them about the notebook she had found and the information she had collected. Several residents began to remember families who had lost their land under strange circumstances. "My family went through that too," said a middle-aged man. "We lost our small farm in 2005. They said it was to build a school, but they never built any school." "My aunt lost her ranch in 2010, added a woman. "They also said it was for public works, but later they sold it to a private company." Martha realized she had sparked the community's interest. Perhaps this was the opportunity she needed to expose the scheme publicly. "Everyone, if you want to know the truth about what happened to these lands, we can meet and talk. I have information that will shock you." Several neighbors agreed to meet at Gladys's house the following evening. Martha sent a message to her son through the note system, telling him about the developments. The reply came quickly. "Mom, great idea. It's time to involve the community. I'll prepare copies of the most important documents to show at the meeting. But be careful. They will intensify their attempts to silence you." On the night of the meeting, more than 20 people gathered at Gladys's house. Martha organized all the information she had collected and presented it clearly and instructively, showing how the scheme worked. "Everyone, what I've discovered is that there's a group of people in our city who for decades have been stealing land from hard-working families. They use City Hall and the local justice system to force sales at low prices, claiming public interest, and then resell to business people for much higher amounts." She showed the notebook pages with names, dates, and figures. Several people recognized their own family names on the list. And look who the names that always appear are: Prosecutor Sterling, Mayor Harrison, and always the same companies buying the land afterward. A gentleman raised his hand. Mrs. Martha, what you're saying is extremely serious. Are you sure this information is true? I am absolutely certain, and I have more evidence that I can't show yet, because it's with someone who is helping me with the investigation. Who is this person? Martha hesitated for a moment, but decided it was time to tell the truth. It's my son David, who was forced to leave town 30 years ago when he first uncovered this scheme. The revelation caused general surprise. Many people remembered David and his mysterious departure from town decades ago. Is Mr. David alive? Asked a lady. I remember him. He was a very smart boy. Yes, he is, and he has returned to finish the investigation he started 30 years ago. The meeting lasted over 3 hours. In the end, the group decided to form a committee to investigate the allegations and seek justice for the affected families. They also agreed to support Martha against the intimidation attempts. In the following days, news of the meeting spread through the town. The pressure on Martha increased even more, but now she had the support of part of the community. One morning, she received an unexpected visit. It was a journalist from Dallas who had received anonymous information about the case. Mrs. Martha, my name is Samantha Thompson. I'm an investigative journalist with the Texas Sentinel. I received some very interesting information about irregularities in your town and would like to speak with you. Martha was initially suspicious, remembering her son's advice about not trusting anyone. How did you learn about my case? I received an anonymous call from someone who said they had evidence of a corruption scheme involving land. The person gave me your name as a reference. What kind of evidence? Documents, recordings, photographs, everything very well organized. The person said you could confirm the information and provide more details. Martha realized it must have been David who contacted the journalist. And where is this evidence? The person said they would deliver everything in person, but only if you confirm the information is true and that you are willing to collaborate with the journalistic investigation. I am Mrs. Samantha, but first I need to speak with this person who contacted you. They said they would contact me again after I spoke with you. Can you tell me what you know? Martha decided to trust the journalist and told her the whole story. Samantha was impressed by the amount of information and the severity of the allegations. Mrs. Martha, if all this is proven, it will be one of the biggest corruption scandals we've ever investigated. I will need much more evidence to be able to publish the story. The evidence exists. I'm just waiting for the person who is helping me to decide when is the best time to reveal everything. That night, Martha found a note from her son. Mum, the journalist is trustworthy. I've looked into her and she has a good reputation. I will arrange a meeting to deliver the material. But first, I need to obtain a few more pieces of evidence. Patience. While she waited, Martha continued to be pressured by the local authorities. She received a new summons for a psychiatric examination, this time with a threat of arrest if she did not appear. The situation was becoming unbearable. It was then that something unexpected happened. During one of her morning walks, Martha was approached by a man she didn't know. Mrs. Martha, I need to speak with you. Who are you? My name is Robert Thompson. I'm a retired accountant, and I worked at City Hall for 20 years. I heard you were investigating the irregularities with the lands. And what does that have to do with you? I know a lot of things, Mrs. Martha. For years I was forced to falsify documents and cook the books to hide the scheme. I always wanted to report it, but I was afraid because of the threats I received. Why are you coming to me now? Because I'm sick, Mrs. Martha. The doctors gave me only a few months to live. And before I go, I want to clear my conscience and help bring about justice. Robert said he had kept copies of various incriminating documents over the years, including spreadsheets showing the real values of the transactions and receipts for the offshore accounts where the money was deposited. Mrs. Martha, I can prove everything you are reporting, and I can prove even more things you can't even imagine. What kind of things? The scheme doesn't only involve lands. There is embezzlement of funds from health, education, public works. It's a criminal organization that has been sucking this city dry for decades. Martha was moved by the accountant's courage in speaking out. Mr. Robert, are you willing to tell all of this to a journalist? I am, Mrs. Martha, and I'm also willing to testify in court even knowing the risks. That night, Martha left an urgent note for her son telling him about Robert. The reply came quickly. "Mom, this changes everything. I'll accelerate the schedule. Set up a meeting with the journalist for tomorrow night. It's time to expose everything." The next day, Martha, Samantha, and Robert met at Gladys's house. Robert brought 2 folders full of documents he had collected over 20 years. "Miss Samantha, what I'm going to show you is just a small part of everything I know. If you want the full story, you're going to need a lot of space in the newspaper." The documents revealed the existence of at least 15 shell companies created to launder the embezzled money. They also showed that the scheme extended to neighboring towns, forming a true regional corruption network. "My God," exclaimed Samantha, "this is enough to bring down the entire municipal administration and even implicate state authorities." "And this is just the beginning," said Robert. "I have proof that part of the money was used to buy witnesses' silence and even to fund election campaigns." Samantha spent hours photographing and organizing the documents. When she finished, she was visibly impressed. "Everyone, this is material for a series of reports. I'll need at least 2 weeks to investigate everything and confirm the information with other sources." "And what about our safety during this time?" asked Martha. "They won't stand still when they find out you are investigating." "You're right. I'll work discreetly and won't publish anything until I'm absolutely sure we are protected." As she left the meeting, Samantha was followed by a dark car. She noticed the tail and took several detours to shake the followers, but it was clear her activities were being monitored. The next day, Robert didn't show up for a meeting they had scheduled. Martha went to his house and found worried neighbors. "Mrs. Martha, your Robert was taken away by an ambulance last night. They say he fell ill, but he was fine during the day." "Which hospital did they take him to?" "We don't know. The ambulance wasn't from here in town." Martha had a bad feeling. Robert had been well within his limitations, and he had said he still had a few months to live. It was very suspicious that he fell ill right after the meeting with the journalist. She tried to locate Robert at the local hospitals, but no one had any information about him. It was as if he had vanished. That night, she left a desperate note for her son. "David, Robert has disappeared. He may have been kidnapped or worse. I think they found out about our meeting with the journalist. I'm very afraid." The reply came the next morning. "Mum, I'm also worried about Robert. Change of plans. I'm going to hand everything over to the journalist today, before it's too late. If anything happens to me, you must keep fighting for the truth." That message terrified Martha. Her son was putting himself in extreme danger to expose the scheme. She spent the entire day anguished, imagining the worst. At night, she heard noise in the street and got scared. Several people were talking loudly. Looking out the window, she saw agitated neighbors on the sidewalk. "Mrs. Martha, come see this," shouted Gladys. She left the house and saw several federal police vehicles parked on the street. Men in suits were entering and leaving houses, apparently executing search and seizure warrants. "What's happening?" she asked. "It looks like they're arresting people from City Hall," replied a neighbor. "They've already taken the mayor and several others." Martha felt her heart race. Could the operation have begun? Had her son's and Robert's evidence reached the proper authorities? One of the federal police officers approached her. "Are you Martha Miller?" "Yes, I am." "I need to speak with you. You provided some information that was crucial to this operation." "What operation?" "Operation Clean Ground. We are dismantling a criminal organization that for decades has been embezzling public funds and illegally appropriating rural properties in this region." "And how did you get this information?" "We received a complete dossier with irrefutable evidence, documents, recordings, photographs, all very well organized. We also received the testimony of an accountant who confirmed all the information." "Is Robert okay?" "Mr. Robert Thompson is under our protection. He was being threatened and requested our help. He was removed from the city for his own safety, but is actively cooperating with the investigation." Martha felt enormous relief. Robert was alive and protected, and the police operation meant that justice had finally come to the town. "And the people who were arrested?" "So far, 17 arrest warrants have been executed. Among those detained are the mayor, Prosecutor Sterling, several City Hall employees, and businessmen who were part of the scheme." "And now?" Now begins the process of further investigation and restitution to the harmed families. You will be an important witness in the case. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. In the following weeks, the town experienced a true revolution. Journalist Samantha's series of reports had been published simultaneously with the police operation, causing a national impact. The Operation Clean Ground case became an example of fighting corruption in small towns. Martha became a well-known figure in the region, being invited to give interviews and tell her story. But she always made sure to share the credit with her son and with Robert. "I was just the visible face of this fight," she would say in interviews. "But the true hero is my son, who never gave up on the truth, and Mr. Robert, who had the courage to speak out even while taking risks." One morning, as she walked along the same road where she had found the first arrow of stones months before, Martha saw a familiar figure approaching. It was David, walking calmly in the sun, no longer needing to hide. "Good morning, Mom," he said, smiling. "Good morning, my son. How do you feel now that it's all over?" "Relieved, Mother, and proud. You were braver than I ever imagined you could be. And you were more persistent than I imagined. 30 years holding on to that information, waiting for the right opportunity to act. I couldn't forget, Mother. All the families who were wronged deserve justice." They walked together down the road talking about the future. David had decided to return to Abilene for good and reopen his law office, now to help families recover their land or receive fair compensation. "And you, Mother, will you continue your morning walks?" "Of course I will, but now without needing to look for mysterious arrows." "About that, Mother, do you remember the first arrow you found?" "How could I forget? It's what started everything. I made that arrow to get your attention. I knew you passed by there every morning. It was my way of signaling that I was back and that I needed your help. And the other arrows that appeared and disappeared, those were mine too. I would watch you from afar, seeing if you were following the clues. When I noticed other people might see, I would dismantle everything during the night." Martha smiled. "My artistic son, you were always creative at solving problems. I learned from you, Mother. Remember when I was little and you taught me that for every difficult situation there is a solution. We just need to be creative enough to find it." "Yes, I remember. And you applied that lesson very well." They arrived at the spot where the first arrow had been found. David bent down and began arranging some stones on the ground. "What are you doing, son?" "Making one last arrow, Mother. But this time not to hide a secret, but to mark a new beginning." He arranged the stones to form an arrow pointing not north but toward the city of Abilene, symbolizing the return and renewal. "This arrow will stay here permanently," he said, "to remind everyone that the truth always finds a way, even if it takes 30 years. Martha looked at the stone formation and then at her son. "David, do you forgive me for not believing you 30 years ago?" "Mother, there's nothing to forgive. You were worried about me. You wanted to protect me. I understand that now. And do you forgive me for letting you leave alone?" "Mother, if you hadn't let me leave, I never would have learned everything I needed to learn to resolve this situation. Sometimes, the most painful paths are the ones that lead us where we need to go." They embraced for a long time, sealing not only mutual forgiveness, but also the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. In the following months, Abilene underwent a complete transformation. A new municipal administration was elected based on promises of transparency and honesty. The investigations revealed that the scheme had diverted more than $50 million over 3 decades. The wronged families began receiving fair compensation, calculated based on current property values. Many managed to repurchase land and rebuild their lives. Robert recovered completely from the supposed medical emergency, which had actually been staged to remove him from town before he could be silenced for good. He became a key witness in the trials and helped recover millions in misappropriated funds. The journalist Samantha won several awards for her coverage of the case and wrote a book telling the whole story, the royalties of which she donated to an assistance fund for the affected families. Martha returned to her routine of morning walks, but now always accompanied by neighbors and friends who admired her courage. She became a kind of informal community counselor, always willing to listen to problems and help find solutions. David reopened his office and quickly became one of the most respected lawyers in the region. He specialized in human rights and corruption cases, always focused on helping the most vulnerable. The place where Martha found the first arrow became a landmark in the city. The city hall installed a commemorative plaque there with the inscription, "Place where the truth was discovered," in honor of all who fight for justice. The stone arrow remained untouched, protected by a municipal law that declared it a city historical heritage. Tourists from other regions began visiting Abilene specifically to see the Truth Landmark, as it became known. 1 year after the police operation, the city organized a ceremony to honor everyone involved in uncovering the corruption scheme. Martha was chosen as the keynote speaker. "Dear fellow citizens," she said, before hundreds of people gathered in the central square. "What we learned from this entire situation is that injustice only thrives when good people stay silent. For decades, many of us suspected something was wrong, but we chose to keep quiet. It wasn't out of malice or cowardice, but out of fear and not knowing how to act. What changed was that some people decided they could no longer live with injustice, even knowing the risks. My son David spent 30 years of his life away from his family and the city he loved because he chose to fight for the truth. Mr. Robert risked his own life to provide the necessary evidence. The journalist Samantha put her career on the line to publish our story. But you were also heroes. When you supported me that day, they tried to take me away by force. When you attended the meetings, even knowing you could be targeted. When you chose to believe the truth instead of the lies they spread about me. What we achieved here wasn't just justice for a few families. We achieved proof that it is possible to change reality when good people unite for a just cause." Martha's speech was interrupted several times by emotional applause. At the end, the entire audience rose in a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. After the ceremony, mother and son walked together to the stone arrow. The sun was setting, painting the sky with orange hues that contrasted with the arid landscape. "Mom, there's something I never told you," said David. "What is it, son?" "All those years away from here, I would secretly come back once a year on your birthday. I would hide, just to see if you were okay." Martha was moved. "You did that?" "Yes, I did. I couldn't stay completely away. It was my way of keeping a connection with you and with this land. And I thought you had forgotten me." "Never, Mom. A person never forgets their roots, no matter how far they go. And my roots have always been here, with you." They stood there in silence, contemplating the stone arrow that had changed their lives and the life of an entire community. The rock formation pointing toward the city symbolized not only David's return, but also the return of hope and justice to Abilene. "Son, what do you think will happen from now on?" "I think we built something bigger than justice, Mum. We built trust. Now people know they can fight for their rights and that it's worth believing in the truth." "And you? Are you staying for good?" "Yes, Mom. I've already lost 30 years away from you. I don't intend to lose another single day." As they walked back home, Martha thought about how life can change in unexpected ways. A few months ago, she was just a retiree who walked the same road every morning. Today, she was recognized as a hero who helped transform her city. But more important than public recognition was having her son back. The house that for 30 years had echoed only with her lonely footsteps now came back to life with conversations and laughter. David had moved back into the room he had occupied in his youth. Martha made a point of preparing his favorite meals, and he helped her with the household chores that had become difficult with age. They established a new routine: morning walks together, lunches where they talked about the cases David was working on as a lawyer, afternoons where she helped him organize legal documents, and evenings where they watched television or simply talked about life. "You know, Mum, I always imagined what it would be like when I came back home, but the reality is much better than I imagined." "Why?" "Because now we are different people from the ones who fell out 30 years ago. You've become an even stronger and braver woman than I remembered, and I learned to value things I didn't value when I was young." "What things?" The importance of family, the value of having roots, the peace that comes from being in the place where you belong. Martha smiled. And I learned that sometimes we need to let the people we love follow their own paths, even when those paths scare us. 6 months after David's permanent return, they received a special visit. It was a delegation of residents from another small town in Texas, which was facing problems similar to those Abilene had faced. "Mrs. Martha, we came here because we heard your story, and we would like your help," said the group's leader. "Our town also has problems with illegal land grabs, but we don't know how to proceed." Martha looked at her son, who nodded encouragingly. "What do you want me to do?" "We want you to teach us how you managed to organize and fight for your rights." "I didn't do anything special," Martha replied. "I just didn't give up when I discovered something was wrong." "But how did you get proof? How did you involve the community? How did you reach the press?" Martha spent the next few hours recounting her entire experience in detail. David supplemented it with legal and strategic information. Together, they created a sort of manual on how to confront local corruption. In the following months, similar situations repeated. Delegations from other towns arrived seeking guidance. Martha and David decided to formalize this assistance by creating a non-governmental organization called Truth and Justice. The foundation offered free consulting to communities facing problems of corruption and illegal land grabs. Robert, fully recovered and retired, joined the team as a financial consultant. "I never imagined our story would have this development," Martha said to Gladys during one of their chats. "You've become an important person, Martha. Last week I saw you on television speaking at a conference there in Washington, D.C. That almost embarrasses me, Gladys. I'm just a retired teacher who did what she thought was right." "Precisely why people trust you. You're not a politician, you have no self-interest. You're just a citizen who wants justice." The repercussions of the Abilene case reached international anti-corruption organizations. Martha was invited to participate in conferences abroad, always accompanied by David, who served as her translator and legal advisor. At one of these conferences, held in Canada, she met other people who had faced similar situations in their countries. It was moving to realize that the fight for justice is universal, regardless of borders or languages. "Senora Martha," said a Spanish activist, "your story has inspired us greatly. It shows that no matter your age or social condition, anyone can make a difference." "Thank you, but I didn't do anything alone. I had help from my son, from friends in the community, from competent professionals. The fight for justice is always a collective one." 2 years after the discovery of the first stone arrow, Abilene was a completely different city. The economy had improved significantly with the end of corruption and the investments in infrastructure that were previously diverted. The city gained a new hospital, schools were renovated, roads were paved. Public money was finally being used for the public good. Martha was elected Honorary Citizen of the Year and received several awards for her work in defense of human rights. But for her, the greatest reward was seeing the families who had recovered their lands thriving again. "Mother, are you fulfilled with everything that happened?" asked David during one of their morning walks. "You know, son, fulfillment for me isn't the awards or the recognition. It's knowing that when I leave this life, I leave this place a little better than I found it." "And you did, Mother." "Much better. But mainly, I am fulfilled because I have you back. For 30 years, I felt an emptiness in my chest that nothing could fill. Now I feel complete again." They stopped at the stone arrow, which remained intact and well-preserved. The city hall had built a small rest area around it, with benches and a drinking fountain for walkers. "Son, promise me one thing." "I promise anything, Mother." "Promise that you will keep fighting for justice, even after I'm no longer here to support you." "Mother, don't talk like that. It's natural in life, David. I'm 74. I won't last forever. But I want to know that the work we started will continue." "I promise, Mother. And I also promise that I will teach my children, when I have them, to value the truth and fight for the weak." "You're going to have children?" "I hope so. I met a very special young woman who works as a social worker here in the city. She's also involved in the work of helping the affected families." Martha smiled. "And when will I meet this special young woman?" "On Sunday. She's already invited to have lunch with us." Sunday arrived and Martha met Megan, a 35-year-old woman, intelligent and dedicated to social work. During lunch, it was easy to see that she and David shared the same values and the same passion for justice. "Mrs. Martha, I want you to know that I really admire the work you've done," said Megan. "It's an inspiration for all of us who fight for the rights of minorities." "Thank you, my dear. And tell me, how did you and my son meet?" "We worked together on a case involving an indigenous family that was being expelled from their lands. David handled the legal part, and I handled the social assistance. We discovered we make a good team." "In more ways than one," joked David, making Megan blush. Martha realized the young woman was perfect for her son, intelligent, committed to social causes, and with the evident affection she showed for him. "Megan, do you have family here in the region?" "I do, Mrs. Martha. My parents live in Garanhuns and I have 2 brothers who work in Dallas." "And what do they think of your work?" "They fully support it. My family always taught me that we should use our knowledge to help those most in need." After lunch, while David showed Megan the rural areas where the families had recovered their lands, Martha kept thinking about how life was full of surprises. 3 years ago, she was alone, with her son missing for decades. Now, not only did she have him back, but there was the prospect of gaining a daughter-in-law and perhaps grandchildren in the future. A few months later, David officially announced his engagement to Megan. Martha was beaming and insisted on organizing a party to celebrate. "Mum, you don't need to throw a big party. We want something simple." "David, after waiting 30 years to see you happy, I'm going to throw the party I want." The engagement party was a landmark event in Abilene. Not only family and friends attended, but also many of the people who had been helped by Martha and David's work. Robert was there, fully recovered and happy. Gladys was moved to see her friend's happiness. The journalist Samantha came from Dallas especially for the party, bringing a surprise: the first copy of the book she had written about the case, with a special dedication to Martha. "Mrs. Martha, this book is yours too. It tells our story, the story of how ordinary people can change the world when they unite for truth." During the party, there was a special moment when David made a toast. "I want to toast not only to my engagement to Megan, but especially to the woman who taught me that it's possible to fight for our ideals without ever giving up. My mother showed me that age is no barrier to being courageous, that education and persistence can overcome any obstacle. 3 years ago, when I returned to this town, I was just fulfilling a personal mission to seek justice. I never imagined I would find not only my family, but also my calling and the love of my life. So I toast to my mother, to my fiancé, and to all of you who have proven that when good people unite, there is no force that can stop them." The toast was met with applause and many tears of emotion. Martha felt like the happiest person in the world at that moment. The wedding was set for 6 months later, enough time to organize everything down to the smallest detail. Martha insisted on personally sewing Megan's wedding dress, a family tradition she had learned from her own mother. "Mrs. Martha, you don't have to go to all this trouble," protested Megan. "My dear, it's what a mother-in-law does for the daughter-in-law she loves. Besides, I love sewing. I haven't had such a special project in years." During the months of wedding preparations, the Truth and Justice Foundation continued to grow. They had already helped communities in more than 15 towns in the region, always with positive results. Robert officially assumed the presidency of the organization, freeing Martha and David to dedicate themselves more to the complex cases that required deep investigation. "Mrs. Martha, I never imagined my decision to speak out would result in all this," said Robert during a foundation meeting. "Mr. Robert, it was your courage that made possible everything we've achieved. Without your evidence, we would never have managed to bring down the scheme. But you were the one who took the first step, Mrs. Martha. If you hadn't insisted on investigating those stone arrows, I would never have had the courage to speak up." The wedding eve was a day of great emotion for Martha. She helped Megan get ready, as a biological mother would. "Megan, I want you to know you're not just gaining a husband. You're gaining a family that already loves you very much." "Mrs. Martha, you don't know how much this means to me. I've always dreamed of having a mother-in-law like you, and I've always dreamed of having a daughter like you." The wedding was held at the main church in Abilene, with more than 300 guests in attendance. Martha was radiant, seeing her son so happy. During the ceremony, when the priest asked if anyone objected to the union, a playful voice shouted from the back, "I object, unless they ask me to be the best man." It was one of Megan's brothers, making a joke that drew laughter from the entire congregation. The relaxed atmosphere made the ceremony even more special. At the wedding reception, Martha danced with her son in the traditional mother and groom waltz. It was an emotional moment that definitively sealed his return to the family. "Mom, thank you for never giving up on me," whispered David during the dance. "Son, a mother never gives up. It might take 30 years, but she never gives up." A few months after the wedding, Megan shared the news Martha had been waiting for. She was pregnant. The future grandmother was elated at the prospect of finally having grandchildren. "Mom, you're more excited about the pregnancy than I am," Megan joked. "My dear, after waiting so many years to be a grandmother, I have the right to be excited." "What if it's twins? Even better, more grandchildren to spoil." Megan's pregnancy proceeded without any problems, and Martha accompanied her to every doctor's appointment. She insisted on preparing special meals for her daughter-in-law and had already started knitting baby clothes. "Mrs. Martha, you are very anxious," the doctor observed during one of the appointments. "It seems like you're the one having the baby." "Doctor, after waiting 75 years to be a grandmother, I have the right to be anxious." The baby was born on Martha's birthday, a coincidence she considered a gift from fate. It was a boy who was named Ethan, in honor of Megan's maternal grandfather. "Mom, do you want to be the first person to hold him?" asked David at the hospital. "Yes, I do, my son." When Martha held her grandson in her arms, she felt an indescribable emotion. It was as if her entire life had led to that perfect moment. "Welcome to the world, Ethan," she whispered to the baby. "Your grandmother has many stories to tell you." Little Ethan became the joy of the household. Martha spent hours singing lullabies, telling stories, and simply admiring her sleeping grandson. "Megan, I've never seen my mother so happy," David commented. "Ethan has given her life a new purpose. And she has been a wonderful grandmother. I don't know what I would do without her help." When Ethan turned 1, the family organized a special party. Among the guests were all the important characters from the story: Robert, Gladys, Samantha, and many of the families who had been helped by Martha's work. During the party, Martha gave an emotional speech. "Dear friends, when I found that first arrow made of stones 4 years ago, I never imagined my life would change so much. Not only did I regain my beloved son, but I gained a wonderful daughter and this beautiful grandson who is the joy of my days. But more important than that, I discovered it's never too late to fight for our ideals. At 72, when many people already consider themselves too old for change, I proved that age is just a number. Today, at 76, I am more active and fulfilled than I was at 50. I have a beautiful family, work that gives me purpose, and the satisfaction of knowing I helped make our city a more just place. If my story serves as inspiration for other people, especially other women my age, I will have fulfilled my mission." The speech was met with a warm ovation. Several people approached her afterward to congratulate her and share how her story had inspired them to never give up fighting for their rights. That night, after all the guests had left, Martha stayed on the porch looking at the stars and reflecting on everything that had happened. David approached and sat beside her. "What are you thinking about, Mom?" "I'm thinking about how surprising life is, son. 4 years ago, I was a lonely widow who walked the same road every morning without much purpose. Today, I'm a great-grandmother. I have a foundation that helps people. I get invitations to speak all over the world." "You weren't a person without purpose, Mom. You were a person who hadn't yet discovered what your purpose was." "Perhaps you're right. Perhaps everything that happened to me before was just preparation for what I was meant to do in this phase of life." "It certainly was, Mom. You needed the experience as a teacher to know how to educate people, the experience as a mother to understand love and protection, the experience as a wife to comprehend partnership, and the experience of the pain of separation to value the reunion." Exactly. 2 years later, Ethan was already walking and saying a few words. His first complete word was Grandma, to Martha's immense joy. The Truth and Justice Foundation had become a national reference in the fight against corruption in small towns. Martha received several important awards, including an honorable mention from the UN for her work defending human rights. "Mrs. Martha, you've become a national figure," said Samantha during one of her visits. "Last week I saw a piece about your work in the national newspaper." "That sometimes even embarrasses me, Samantha. I'm just a grandmother who did what she thought was right." "That's precisely why people identify with you. You're not a famous person or a politician fighting for personal interests. You're an ordinary citizen who decided not to accept injustice." At 78, Martha remained active, giving lectures, advising other communities, and, most importantly, taking care of her little grandson, Ethan, who was already speaking in full sentences and demonstrating impressive intelligence. "Grandma, tell the story of the stones," Ethan would ask every night before bed. "Again, my love? Don't you get tired of that story?" "No, Grandma, it's the best story in the world." And Martha would tell it, always with new details, how she had discovered the arrow of stones that changed her life. Ethan listened attentively, asking smart questions that sometimes surprised her. "Grandma, why did Grandpa David make the stones?" "To let me know he had returned, my love." "And why didn't he talk to you directly?" "Because he was afraid, Ethan. Sometimes people do wrong things and other people are afraid to tell the truth. But weren't you afraid?" "Yes, I was, my love. But fear can't stop us from doing what's right." Ethan absorbed every word like a sponge, and Martha knew she was planting important seeds in her grandson's heart. One Sunday morning, when Ethan was 3 years old, he made a special request. "Grandma, I want to see the stones from the story." "What stones, my love?" "The stones Grandpa David made. I want to see where the story began." Martha looked at David and Megan, who smiled encouragingly. "All right, Ethan. Let's go on a special outing." The whole family walked to the place where the arrow of stones was still preserved. Ethan was impressed seeing the formation. "It's so big, Grandma. How did Grandpa manage to do this?" "With a lot of patience and care, Ethan. When we really want something, we can do incredible things. Can I touch the stones?" "Yes, you can, my love." Ethan touched each stone with reverence, as if touching something sacred. Then he looked at Martha with his intelligent eyes. "Grandma, when I grow up, will I help people like you did?" Martha felt her eyes fill with tears. "If you want to, my love. But first you'll study hard to learn how to help better." "I will study, Grandma. I promise." At that moment, Martha realized her story would not end with her. The work of fighting for justice and for the rights of the weakest would continue through future generations. Ethan, even so small, already showed he had inherited the sensitivity to injustice and the desire to correct it. End of story. Now tell me, what did you think of this moving story? Do you believe Martha made the right decisions by risking her own safety to seek the truth? Was it worth all the risk she took to reunite with her son and expose the corruption? Leave your honest opinion in the comments. I'd love to know your perspective. And if this story moved you as much as it moved me to tell it, don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one.